At my son's wedding, the bride told me there was no seat for me in the hall and placed me in the kitchen instead. I smiled. I stayed quiet, and I didn't make a scene. But deep inside, I knew this silence would cost them dearly. After the wedding, I canceled everything: the gifts, the support, the future plans they were counting on. Sometimes, silence is louder than words. What would you have done if you were in my place? That morning, the sun was glowing warmly across the city. It should have been the happiest day of my life, the day my only son got married. I had imagined this day so many times. In my dreams, I saw myself sitting at the honored table, surrounded by family, smiling proudly as my son walked down the aisle in his suit, holding the hand of the woman he loved. I thought the music would play, the applause would thunder, and I would be recognized as the mother who sacrificed everything to raise him. But reality was nothing like I imagined. When I entered the wedding hall, something felt wrong. A few relatives gave me strange, almost pitying looks. I smiled back politely, ignoring the unease that slowly crept into my chest. A waiter approached me and gestured for me to follow. I thought he was leading me to my seat at the main hall, where my family should be. But step by step, we walked further away from the decorations, the lights, and the sound of laughter. The hallway grew quieter, colder. Finally, he stopped near the kitchen. There, in a small side room, was a plain plastic chair and a small table pushed against the wall. The smell of oil and smoke hung heavy in the air. The waiter avoided my eyes. "Ma'am, please, sit here. The hall is full." I froze. My voice trembled as I asked, Does my son know about this?" He just forced a polite smile, bowed, and left without answering. I sat down slowly, the plastic chair cold beneath me. Through the half-closed door, I could still hear the music, the sound of glasses clinking, the laughter of guests. But I was not part of it. I was in the kitchen, alone. My heart felt like it was being torn apart. I had worked endlessly my entire life. I had been a single mother after my husband left. I sold food on the streets, cleaned houses, sewed clothes late into the night, anything to make sure my son had food on the table, shoes on his feet, and books for school. I had dreamed that one day he would stand tall, successful, and I would finally feel my sacrifices were worth it. Today was supposed to be that day. And yet, instead of pride, all I felt was humiliation. The bride, my new daughter-in-law, had decided I was not worthy of sitting with the guests. She had hidden me away in the kitchen like an extra mouth to feed, an inconvenience in her perfect picture. I clenched my hands together, forcing myself not to cry. I told myself, don't ruin his day, don't make a scene, just smile and endure. So I sat there, silent, my face calm. But inside me, a fire was burning. I knew this insult would not pass without consequence. I stayed quiet, but my silence was not weakness. My silence was the beginning of a decision that would change everything. As I sat in that suffocating kitchen, listening to the muffled laughter outside, memories came rushing back. They were memories I hadn't invited, but they came anyway, sharp, raw, and filled with emotion. I remembered the day I first held my son in my arms. He was so small, his tiny fingers curling around mine, his cry fragile yet strong. I was terrified. I was young, abandoned by my husband, and utterly alone. But in that moment, I made a silent promise. I will give you everything, even if I have nothing left for myself. And I did. The years that followed were not easy. I worked in the marketplace, waking up before dawn to buy vegetables and sell them by the roadside. My hands were blistered from carrying heavy baskets. My back ached, and sometimes I collapsed onto the floor at night from exhaustion. But every time my son looked at me with his innocent eyes, I found strength again. When he was old enough to start school, I could barely afford the fees. I remember sewing clothes by candlelight, the needle pricking my fingers until they bled. My neighbors used to ask me why I pushed myself so hard. I always answered, because my son deserves a future better than mine. I sacrificed my meals so he could eat. I wore old, patched clothes so he could wear proper uniforms. I never once bought jewelry or luxuries for myself. I saved every coin for his education. And he didn't disappoint me. My son was smart, determined, and hardworking. He studied late into the night, and when he received his first scholarship, I cried tears of joy. All those years of struggle finally seemed worth it, but as he grew older, he began to drift away. It was natural, I told myself. Children grow, they find their own lives. Still, I longed for the closeness we once shared. I longed for the days when he would hug me after school and say, "Mom, I'll make you proud." When he introduced me to the woman he wanted to marry, I tried to smile. She was beautiful, elegant, well-educated, but from the very beginning, I could feel her coldness toward me. Her eyes were polite but distant. Her smile was thin, as if forced. I tried to ignore it. I told myself, she will warm up to me. She just needs time. But time only deepened the distance. She never called me mother. She always addressed me formally, keeping a wall between us. Whenever I offered to help with the wedding preparations, she declined with an icy smile. "Thank you, but it's all under control." At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I was too old-fashioned. Maybe I didn't fit into her world of sophistication and status. Still, I tried. I bought a new dress for the wedding, even though it meant dipping into my small savings. I wanted to look presentable, for my son's sake. And yet, despite everything, I was still placed in the kitchen on the very day I should have been honored. I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to steady my breathing as the voices of guests drifted in from outside. I heard them calling my son's name, congratulating him. "You're so lucky. What a beautiful bride you have," they said. But none of them knew where his mother was. None of them knew I was sitting alone, surrounded by dirty dishes, like a servant. I whispered to myself, "This is not the life I imagined. This is not the ending I deserve." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I quickly wiped them away. I didn't want anyone to see me broken. Not today, not ever. Instead, I forced a smile, though no one was there to see it. Because deep inside, I knew something they didn't. When this day was over, everything would change. The sound of music swelled from the hall, muffled by the thick kitchen door. Every note seemed to mock me, reminding me that I was not part of the celebration. I sat in silence, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. The plastic chair beneath me creaked, and the table was sticky with traces of spilled sauce from the caterers. The smell of frying oil stung my nose. Somewhere nearby, a chef shouted instructions. Pots clattered. The wedding of my only son was happening just a few steps away, and yet I felt as though I was miles from it. I heard my son's voice through the speakers outside. He was giving a short speech, thanking the guests for coming. My heart ached. I wanted so badly to be in that hall, to see his smile, to stand tall as his mother. But I was hidden here, out of sight, out of mind. Suddenly, the kitchen door swung open. A young waitress slipped inside, carrying an empty tray. She startled when she saw me sitting there. Her eyes widened with pity. "Oh, ma'am, you shouldn't be here," she whispered. I gave her a small smile, though my heart was breaking. "It's fine, dear," I said softly. "This is where I belong, apparently." Her face flushed with shame. She didn't know what to say. After a brief silence, she placed a glass of water in front of me and hurried back out. I stared at the water, my reflection trembling in its surface. Then I heard laughter. Sharp, clear, unmistakable. It was the bride's laughter. She was making a toast, her voice bright and confident as she thanked everyone for coming. Everyone but me. I remembered her words the night before the wedding. She had pulled my son aside, not realizing I could hear. "She's too simple," she had said coldly. "I don't want her embarrassing us in front of my family. Just make sure she stays out of the way." My son had tried to reassure her, his voice hushed. "She won't cause trouble." And now I understood. This kitchen exile had been planned. The truth sliced through me like a knife. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't that the hall was full. No, the bride had deliberately hidden me away, just as she had wanted. I bit down hard on my lip until I tasted blood. Anger flared inside me, but I forced it down. If I stormed out now, if I demanded respect in front of everyone, it would ruin my son's day. People would whisper, "The mother caused a scene. The mother was jealous. The mother couldn't let go." No, I refused to give them that satisfaction. So I stayed quiet. I smiled at no one. I sat in that greasy kitchen and pretended it didn't matter. But inside, my heart was in ashes. Time crawled by. The ceremony, the banquet, the music. It all blurred into a dull, distant hum. Every cheer, every toast, every clap of hands felt like another nail hammered into my chest. At one point, I heard my son's footsteps approach the kitchen. My pulse quickened. Would he come to see me? Would he realize where I had been placed? The door opened slightly. He peeked inside, his eyes darting nervously. "Mom, are you okay?" he whispered. I forced the brightest smile I could manage. "Of course, darling. Don't worry about me. Go enjoy your day." His eyes lingered on me, but only for a moment. Then he nodded and closed the door. And just like that, I was alone again. That was the final confirmation. He knew. He knew I was hidden here, and yet he let it happen. I pressed my hand against my chest as tears slid silently down my cheeks. My son, the boy I had raised with my blood and sweat, had chosen silence over me. At that moment, something inside me shifted. The pain hardened into resolve. If they wanted to treat me like I was nothing, then I would show them the true weight of my silence. The wedding ended. Guests departed with full bellies and happy smiles. The hall emptied and the lights dimmed. The laughter faded into the night, and I walked out of the kitchen with my head held high, my decision already made. The night air was cool when I finally stepped outside the wedding hall. The celebration was over. The lights had dimmed, and only a few staff members remained, cleaning up the mess left behind. I walked slowly, almost trembling with each step. My dress, which I had carefully saved money to buy, felt heavy on my shoulders. It wasn't the fabric, it was the weight of humiliation. No one noticed me leave. No one called after me. I was invisible. The streets were quiet, and as I made my way home, I felt tears welling in my eyes. I tried to hold them back, but when I closed the door behind me and collapsed onto my bed, the dam finally broke. I wept. I wept for the little boy I had raised, for the nights I went hungry so he could eat, for the mornings I woke before dawn to work, for the sacrifices I made silently, never asking for recognition, only hoping that one day my love would be enough. And now I was left in the kitchen, hidden, discarded. I buried my face in my hands. My chest rose and fell with deep, broken sobs. Hours passed, but the pain did not fade. At last, when my tears dried, a strange calmness came over me. It was as though something inside me had died, and in its place, something new was born. I sat up and looked around my small room. In the corner stood the wedding gifts I had prepared. Boxes neatly wrapped, an envelope filled with savings I had scraped together over the years. Money I had planned to give my son and his new wife to help them start their life together. For months, I had imagined their faces when they received it. I thought they would hug me, thank me, promise to take care of me as I grew old. But now I saw the truth. To them, I was not a mother. I was an embarrassment, a burden, an extra mouth to feed. Slowly, deliberately, I picked up the envelope of money. My hands no longer trembled. I tore it open, piece by piece, until the bills fluttered to the floor. I gathered them back, folded them neatly, and locked them away in my drawer. Not for them. Never for them. The gifts, too. I opened each one, unwrapped them, and placed them back into my cupboard. They were mine. They would stay with me. Then I reached for a leather-bound folder hidden beneath my mattress. Inside were documents, papers I had been preparing for months. My modest house, my small savings account, my insurance policy. Everything I owned, I had intended to sign over to my son as a wedding gift. With trembling hands, I lit a candle. The warm flame flickered across my face as I stared at those papers. And then, one by one, I fed them to the fire. The paper curled, blackened, and turned to ash. I whispered to myself, "No more. No more sacrifices for those who cannot see my worth." The fire consumed my past hopes, but strangely, I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I felt free. That night, I made a decision. I would not beg for love. I would not chase respect from those unwilling to give it. I had given everything to my son, and he had chosen silence when I was humiliated. That choice was his, and now, this choice was mine. I canceled everything. No gifts, no money, no inheritance, nothing. All that I had built through years of pain and sacrifice. I would keep it for myself, or leave it to someone who truly valued me. As I watched the last ember fade, I lay down and closed my eyes. My heart was still heavy, but inside me burned a quiet strength. They thought my silence was weakness. They would soon learn it was power. The morning after the wedding, I woke with swollen eyes and an empty heart. Yet, there was a strange sense of clarity within me. My decision had already been made, and there was no turning back. 2 days later, my son came to visit. He walked in with his new wife by his side. She looked elegant, polished, her hair perfectly styled, her smile thin and sharp. "Mom," my son began softly, "we wanted to thank you again for coming to the wedding. It meant a lot to us." His words pierced me. Thank me? He didn't even acknowledge where I had been seated. I looked at him calmly. Yes, I was there. His eyes darted nervously, but he quickly moved on. We wanted to talk about the gifts. I know you've been saving for us. Starting a new life is expensive, and I raised my hand, stopping him mid-sentence. My voice was steady, though inside me, my heart ached. There are no gifts. He froze. What do you mean? I met his gaze without flinching. I canceled everything. The money, the house papers, the savings, all of it. It is no longer yours. His wife stiffened beside him, her smile vanishing. My son's face went pale. Mom, you can't be serious. Oh, I am. My tone was quiet but firm. I sat in the kitchen during your wedding. I listened as your wife laughed while I was hidden like an embarrassment. And you— My voice cracked slightly, but I steadied it. You knew. You saw me there, and you said nothing. My son opened his mouth, but no words came out. I continued, my voice sharper now. All my life I sacrificed for you. I gave up food, comfort, happiness, everything, to give you a future. I thought, at the very least, I deserved a seat at your side on your happiest day. But instead, I was treated like a burden, like someone who didn't belong. So no, there are no gifts, there is no inheritance, there is nothing more I will give to people who cannot respect me. Silence filled the room. The only sound was the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Finally, his wife spoke, her voice trembling with anger. This isn't fair. We need that money. We counted on it. I turned to her slowly, my eyes cold. Respect is not bought with money, and love is not something you inherit. It is something you earn. Her face flushed with rage, but she said nothing more. My son, however, lowered his head. I saw shame flicker in his eyes, perhaps even regret. But it was too late. I stood, my back straight, my voice calm. You made your choice, and I have made mine. Leave now. They left in silence, the door closing behind them with a hollow sound. For the first time in years, I felt powerful. I had lost my son to his own weakness, yes, but I had gained something else. My dignity. That night, I sat by the window, the cool breeze brushing against my face. I thought of the years behind me, the sacrifices, the struggles. For so long, I had believed my worth depended on my son's happiness. But now I knew better. My worth was mine alone. And if the world wanted to place me in the kitchen, I would walk out on my own terms, with my head held high. Final lesson. Sometimes silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is the strongest answer you can give. To every parent watching this, remember, your love is priceless, but it should never come at the cost of your dignity. And to every child listening, never forget, the one who sacrifices for you deserves not only your gratitude, but also your respect.